Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wrap up discussion of Peril's Gate. It's the sixth book in The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts. And today we are very honored to have the author herself join us for a discussion where we get to ask her all the questions we had throughout the reading and maybe just, gush about Peril's Gate together. And with me, of course, I have the usual group of friends. Chris is running a bit behind, but everybody else who's usually present for the weekly discussion is also here with us. Jared, could you start us off with introductions?
Sure, I'm Jared. Can be watching me on the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, where I talk a lot about uh, the Wars of Light and Shadow. Whenever we come across awesome passages that I like to talk about, but you can find me there, and then you also can find me on Page Chewing forums and various podcasts on that platform.
And Chibi, are you too silent to even introduce yourself?
No, I can introduce myself. I am Chibi Poe, a longtime reader of the series and other fantasy novels. I can be found lurking over on Page Chewing, and on Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter. I refuse, and I'm happy to be here.
And Matt, who's the real betrayer because he's been reading ahead without us.
Yeah, I've nearly finished the next one. Hi guys, I'm Matt, also known as Miggins. I run or formerly ran the Hobbit Books YouTube channel. You can find me over usually on Twitter and lurking on the page chewing and voraciously reading Janny Wurts' Wars of Light and Shadow.
Very nice. And Jani, I'm sure everybody watching this probably knows who you are, but would you mind introducing yourself just in case?
Janny Wurts, author, illustrator. What am I up to? 20 novels now and 36 shorts with another no novel brand new underway. So
very nice.
You can find me on my website. I'm the only Janny Wurts in the world. If you spell it correctly, you will find me.
I think I saw that update on Facebook and got very excited about it. Is that going to be a novel set in the same world as The Wars of Light and Shadow?
Nope, completely brand new. Everybody else got a bit of the preview. I crewed on the topsail schooner Wolf.
Ooh.
So it will be a standalone. It will be a nautical fantasy, and it will take place on a boat that is styled after the Wolf.
Nice.
And it will be enormous fun. It will move very fast. It's got a lot of banter, a lot of action, a lively cast of characters, and more I won't say because it doesn't have a home yet. I will be doing the submission in September.
Nice.
See where we put the cards on the table and see what creds we got.
Is that a finished submission in September?
No, it'll be a partial because I'm not going to wait for a whole year to know what's going on. But there'll be enough of it on the ground. There'll be 100 pages and a full outline. There'll be plenty.
Nice.
That's something to look forward to. I can't wait.
Yeah, and there'll be some short fiction based in the world of Light and Shadows, because while I'm waiting for this to find a home or seeing what this turns up for opportunities, then I will be playing around with other things in the bigger world, because there is so much untapped material. When people say, oh, this world has so much lore, you have no idea.
Yeah. I think we got glimpses of that each time we did a wrap-up discussion with
you. Yeah. So there will be a lot more to explore. So I have about probably 5 different short works in the works, and all kinds of graphics and drawings and more maps, ancient maps. Things did not stay static. So there's a lot more history. There's even a folder called Cosmic Events. That's part of the history, and it's like I said, you have no idea.
Nice. What do we need to do to get a preview of one of those for one of these conversations?
Finish the series, because I sure don't want to. I don't want to tip my hand of anything that's going to be revealed in the main series.
It's going to be so exciting to be able to join in, with a new Janny Wurts release. We're not playing catch up anymore. Eventually, we're going to be, just excited as everyone else, making theories. It's going to be so fun.
Oh, it would be fun. But yeah, the fun part is just starting. Believe me, because over the tipping point now. The convergency of the series begins in Trader's Knot, and it accelerates everything.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought when I finally finished this. I was like, this seems to be the launching point for huge things
Everything.
coming up.
Everything was building
Yeah, and it
towards the
had
fulcrum that is Peril's Gate.
yeah,
Now
it
we're
had
going to
that
break the
feel.
envelope, and we're going to break it hard, and we're going to break it fast.
Yep, that's
Nice.
exactly what it felt like, and I was yeah, I'm very excited to get to Trader's Knot
You're not
because
ready.
oh, I'm
You're
not
not
ready.
ready.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Oh, I'm not ready.
I mean,
Okay.
I was taking this thing with me around Chichen Itza, still trying to read that while I was in Mexico. That's how I couldn't keep my hands off it.
Yeah, you're not ready. You're not ready. And that's
You're
the
really
maddening thing
not.
was at the moment when I lost my US publisher, it was at Peril's Gate.
Mm.
And so there was this big silence for years until I could catch things up again. And even to this day, I run into people who say, I thought you stopped after Peril's Gate, or I thought Storm Fortress was the end of the series. Totally not. So it was a very hard moment, when I had nowhere to place Trader's Knot. So I made some crazy decisions out of necessity. But here we are, and now the series is on the ground. You can rip right through it. You don't have to wait. And I'm hoping that the word is going to explode outward on what occurs in the second half of that series.
Nice.
This
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we have a lot of people approaching the second half of the series
Mhm.
now, so it's yeah, it's really exciting. I can't wait because I love long series anyways, and so this is like right up my alley as far as fantasy reading goes, and there's nothing more exciting than hitting that tipping point in a long series and realizing what you got in the store coming forward, and yeah, really looking forward to it. But on to Peril's Gate, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This this came out in 2001, I believe, originally published.
I'd have to look in the hardcover.
Yeah, so
Hardcover US edition.
Later than that.
What's the copyright date?
I think it was 2000. It's 2001 for this.
Yeah, that printing that
Yeah,
you got in your hand did not happen until a few years. Yeah,
yeah,
2001. So there
yep.
was a huge break,
Yeah.
in my career, and I had to stall and wait for all the rights to revert in the United States before I could resell everything as a package. And it was quite a difficult time because publishing went through all kinds of contortions just at that moment.
Mm.
So, but we're here.
Yeah.
Was this the book you split in 3, or was that Grand Conspiracy?
Arc 3
This is
could not be fit in one book. And when you see what happens in the latter two, you'll understand why. There was still too much foundation to be laid. There was still too much water had to go under the dam. The enormous changes that happened to the characters in this volume wasn't something that could be handled in a hurry. You had to see all in depth. You had to live the experience coming up to this moment to
Mhm.
cross that threshold that is Peril's Gate. And a lot of things are going to cut loose and happen very fast. But this moment could not be rushed. So I had originally hoped to get more into one volume, so it could have been maybe 3 volumes like the first, like Mistwraith, Ships and Warhost sort of fit as 3 volumes together, and the last 3, Destiny's Conflict and Initial Trial and Song of the Mysteries, fit as 3. But there's just no way I could cram everything into 3. There was too much intricate depth in the examination and the self-examination that occurs in this volume. And it's like, this is a massive study in why people don't heal, why people don't change, where their self-knowledge falls short, and what holds them up. How long do they stick in one place because they simply can't let go and ask for that help and take that step? and say the past can't be changed. What, at what point do you stop trying to earn your way forward and you realize that you are, and that is enough? So that denial of self and that transition point with characters that have so much stacked on their plate, it just couldn't be rushed. People spend their whole lifetimes and never figure out some of the answers that the characters work through in this book. And I thought it was just too important to fly past, too important to dismiss, too important to step over without that massive self-examination.
Yeah. Well, with the way the events played out in this book in particular, I couldn't see how you could shorten it and still have the same impact at all. It wouldn't. Yeah, like you said, there was too much to put in there, and when you're reading this, it was yeah. I was trying to think of like there was no way you could lessen that in order to make the same impact that the book had. So
It
that
was
makes
not a
perfect
recap.
sense. Yeah,
People
no, it
dismiss
wasn't.
this book as a recap because they skim it and they don't exactly examine line for line what is being laid down on the page. And you see the huge contrast between one character coming to terms and coming to reckoning with the past and another one, Kevor,
Yep.
Yeah.
who doesn't go through that rending moment of trying to push everything into a box and saying this can be reconciled. People can take many routes, and often the easiest one is dismissed. So there were a lot of things in this book that are very, very deep themes that a reader who rushes through it will miss. And you guys are the right readers for the series because you did not.
Yeah, and I think Arathon going through Peril's Gate and going through that whole trial with uh Davian's sorcery in there. It could have easily been a rehash of previous events that you could have just you could take an easy way out and actually just rehashed earlier events and to reform them, but it wasn't. It ended up being a huge character building part of the novel that showed us a new event in light of everything that happened before. And it was just, I love how that was brought forth, and it really twisted my mind. Like, wow, this is new. This is so enlightening and new at this point, and I thought that was great, and which just makes me more excited for the next novel.
Well, also you were really seeing that event, the entire maze, through the eyes of an initiate master and a gifted one. You got to see some of what shaped Arathon's past. You got to see the crucible he went through to be where he was when he stepped through that gate at the West Gate. You got to see who he had been up to this point. So it was in a way a deeper second initiation. And it drew a very hard contrast between the two half-brothers, who they were, where they came from, and what their goals were. So yeah, it is not a recap. Otherwise, why bother?
And,
Right,
and
exactly.
and we also got to see that a lot of the events that Arathon thought he took independent decisions on were actually influenced by the Mistrait. I think reframing that also makes you want to uh, go back and look at everything that happened.
Yep.
First, you think about it differently, everything that you remember. But I think this is also one of the moments in the series that makes you want to like almost stop and go back and reread everything that you've read so far. Uh, but yeah, I think I'd save that for until after Song of Mysteries. But it is just yeah, it isn't. I would disagree with the rehash bit absolutely because you're seeing all the same events but from a different perspective and with more emotion added to them, and I think a lot of those events sometimes we do not even see Arathon's perspective when we first encountered them in the books.
No.
So
Yeah, right.
seeing them again through his eyes, I think and this bit of the book was about building or telling us more about Arathon's character and him confronting himself. So of course it makes sense for him to go back and look at his life, and yeah, it felt like old information with a new light. And it also had a bit of like nostalgic sense to it. We've spent a bit over a year now reading through the series, so it was nice to be reminded of all the things that I enjoyed reading about the first time through.
I'd be interested to hear Chibi's viewpoints because Chibi, you've reread Curse of the Mist Wraith twice or once?
Reread Curse. I've lost count of how many times I've reread Curse.
Lost count.
I can safely say I usually would reread it after every new book. Sometimes, I'd read them all before. So I've easily read Curse the most. I've destroyed almost, two paperbacks. Just wore the covers right off of them.
Which is awesome, by the way. I love
of the original paperback. One of them I gifted to a friend, and the other I've still got on the shelf up here. Like the cover is just like tucked in the pages because it. Yeah.
So did you go back and read Curse of the Mist Wraith after reading Peril's Gate?
Yes.
And like, what was that experience like? Because I now feel like reading the Curse of the Mist Wraith that I feel like I missed so much, and I feel like I feel like an idiot.
Whole different story.
And,
a whole different story, because this is Arathon Unlocked. You see what he held behind the deck in each of those scenes, and you see all of the perspective of all of the factions. You understand what you think their moral high ground is. There's more coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll read like a whole different story.
Yeah. So when you reread Curse for the first time, what kind of like new wonder were you experiencing during that time?
Well, trying to remember, because that was back in 2001. But yeah, I mean, every time I've read, or Jenny's released one of the new books, I've, gone back and I'll read it and then go back and reread the whole series. And like without fail. And I know I've said this before. It's like it recasts everything that anything you read a new book, you learn all kinds of new stuff, and it just totally redoes it like every single time. So it's kind of a trip. And yeah, I just went back through, and I don't know if the first time, if I, even then, if I still caught everything, because 2001, I would have been like 22. So, but yeah, it's, reread since then, I've definitely like expanded, and I'm like, holy crap. And even today, I still find things, in the series. So
the series was designed to be reread. It was designed to shift perspective. Every decade of life that you get under your belt, you will see a different story. That timelessness was built in. So the book you read in your 20s will not be the same book you read in your 40s and 50s. So this is definitely a series that was designed to be relooked at.
And out of any of them, so I feel like Peril's Gate, out of any of them so far for me, will be one that really will change for me, because reading what Arathon goes through and having to shift his own perspective on the events of his past, like I'm sort of at like the same stage as him in my personal life, and so I'm not quite at the stage that Arathon's at. So when I reach that point, hopefully eventually, it's going to be a whole different reading of it, which would be really cool. So I think that's why this one's quite special for me, because I know that the next time that I read it, when I'm ready, then that could hit quite differently, which is really cool.
Yeah, I can speak from experience that when you're older, things hit you quite differently.
What, like the back pain?
Yeah, that's definitely.
But that's one of the challenges of writing a long form work, because you start something in your 20s or your late teens, and then you continue it and you're finishing it up in quite a different perspective. So if you don't build that slide and that ability to extend perspective into the story, you're going to run out of story really fast, because what had meaning and what was cool in one decade, the next decade might be replaced by something else.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Yes, Chris.
I'm muted. Sorry, I'm late, everybody. Hope everybody's keeping well.
Yeah, we're doing good.
And yeah, you got your $600 mug that got flung back by customs because the post office put the valuation at $600 instead of $6.
They knew it was an invaluable mug.
So they shot it all the way back here, and I'm like, but the post office made good on it. I went in with all the documentation, the customs form, showed them the label on the package with all the stickers that Ireland stuck all over it. It said it got to come back. And they said, oh, yeah, we typed it wrong. So they sent it again without me having to lay out international postage. So I'm really happy it got there in one piece. You weren't meant to have to wait that long.
It was a nice treat, but when I got it, certainly. They just seen that your identification was on it, and somebody thought it couldn't be $6. Could not be, not even possible. It must be invaluable, as was said.
If I remember the day that I was mailing that, it was very tough for the post office staff. There were 2 people there, and there were lots and lots of people who couldn't speak English, and only one person who could speak Spanish. And they were coming in with questions that were way beyond those people's pay grade to be answering. So they were struggling. I remember standing in line for an hour, very patiently waiting for those people to try to get the help they needed. So no wonder the poor person was in a hurry to type it through and get it out.
Well, thank you very much for the gift. Yeah. Indeed. Decimal points are important, as are full stops and punctuation. Things that we learn.
The all-important dot. So I had a question that I think I haven't asked you before, and I can't believe I haven't. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the Lyranth? Am I pronouncing it correctly? And Lyranth. But I know there's a pronunciation guide at the back of the glossary, but I still keep forgetting. But can you tell us a little bit about that? And I think a follow-up question for this particular book is, Arathon kind of figured out how to do what he did with the Lyranth with just his voice. So could you tell us a little bit about the development of that portion of the magic as well?
Okay, well, it goes down to harmonics. And you know that I play a lot of instruments and I'm a bagpiper. Bagpipes work on harmonics because you only have 9 notes and you have 2 drones set to the lowest note that are an octave apart. And as the 9 notes that you got for melody come in and out of phase with those drones, you get standing waves of harmonics. And that's why the pipes are so very effective. They definitely affect you. They hit you because those harmonics are very strong. So given that the magic on Ethera works by harmonics, I needed an instrument that had drone strings that would create that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I play 12-string guitar, and the doubled courses makes the sound so much richer when you're playing solo, which I used to play solo in bars. I did old ballads and things like that. You couldn't possibly get that richness of sound out of a 6-string unless you were doing intricate finger picking or something like that. So I went back and forth, but I often leaned towards using the 12-string when I was playing on my own. So I styled the Lyranth to maximize the harmonics from those octaves courses. So the combination of the sound of a 12-string guitar added to the drone strings that you would get with a dulcimer. The old mountain dulcimers had drone strings attached. So that's how I developed the Lyranth. What occurs in Peril's Gate is Arathon makes a shift. He no longer needs an instrument. He no longer needs his voice even. And in the final sequence in that maze, he was using his mind to create those harmonics.
Mm-hmm.
Thought has a frequency. They measure your brain frequency with an EEG. They get a graph out of it. So thoughts can have a harmonic too. And if we were working with resonance that begins off the scale of what our earthly instruments could measure, a lot of the magic that takes place on Ethera occurs there because the harmonics within visual range and sight, the physical range, are going to be affected you strike a harmonic, it's going to affect all other harmonics around it. It's going to bend them either upwards or downwards. So you're going to end up with an average. The standing wave that results will be the combination of the two. So in Peril's Gate, you actually walk that talk. And at the end, where the second stage of that maze unmakes matter, Arathon unmade the spell of the maze and unmade matter. He had to recreate the template to strike the tones to bring it back. And that learning, that scene is powerfully important for later.
Mm.
You had to walk that scene step by step in depth and make that discovery, because a lot of things are going to balance off of that. When I say we're going to step outside the envelope, I'm meaning it. Arc 4 is going to take you far, far from the fields you know.
Nice. Yeah, I am very much looking forward to that.
So yeah, it's a balancing point, because the first half of that maze reconciled the past. And if you caught the balanced moment in the middle where Arathon was at the point of midway and Davian says, you've mastered the past, how will you handle your future? So that final stage of the maze where Arathon turned in challenge on its maker, that is the future. And all of those bits and pieces are going to come back. It wasn't just a recap. It was also throwing the stone forward into the future. So get ready for it. You're not, but
Never
Yeah.
are. Never
You're
are.
not ready.
Chris Matt declared earlier that we are not ready for traitors.
You're not. No. You are gonna hate having to wait 2 weeks to read it or whatever it is.
don't wait, Egamon.
Smugness and Matt's face.
Absolutely. Do not wait. Start it after this. Just right now. Make it
I had a
happen.
quick question there, Janny, about Alphonse. Obviously, he's an initiate master, but I think at the end, Davian's kind of surprised at his level of skill and power. So, could other initiate masters do the same things as Alphon can, or is he still a bit of a unique case here?
Well, his grandfather said he was a prodigy. He won initiate mastery at what, 18 years old? And then left Raven in his 20s. So he was early 20s when he went through the gate. This is not YA. See how many people achieve that as a late teen? Most late teens are not that inwardly grounded to be able to go through what he went through to achieve that at 18. So I don't want to say too much, because I'm going to let the books do it for me.
Mhm.
I'm going to let the books unroll everything that's in play here, which is more than you can see yet. A lot more than you can see yet. But I wanted to show that he had gone through a very arduous upbringing, and it was a razor's edge. If they had put 1 foot wrong in his upbringing, he would have destroyed himself. He would never have met that potential. So as far as what was Davian noticing, what did Davian do, what were the risks that Davian took by sending him through the maze, he says it right out. I'll let you big up the passage. He tells Luhane right away. Yeah, he threw the dice all on the table, and he said outright, I'm creating a weapon.
And then
One that nobody can control. So
It's very ominous there at the end.
well, you'll have to read and find out, won't you? But I mean, I'm not giving you anything that's right in the text of Peril's Gate, and yet still it's such an intense story. Even though it moves slowly, it unwinds each thread very slowly. People still miss stuff.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's always going to happen. But that's the beauty of Chibi-Po rereading.
He doesn't even get it right all the time.
No,
Don't trust anything anybody says.
absolutely.
But it is the value of breaking it into small chunks and discussing it and going over, because like between like the group mind, we'll get more of it than we would individually, I think. Is probably
You guys are really digging into it and you're getting it. It's wonderful to see that you're actually tracking a lot of what I laid down and tried to do. You're actually getting it and going back. If you go back and you look at your discussion on Curse of the Mistwraith, you're all going, I'm stumped. You've learned how to read these books. It would have been a different experience if you could have brought that level of perspective and attention to Curse of the Mistwraith. And that's where people miss it. That's where they lose their place in Curse of the Mistwraith, is they're not prepared to bring that level of attention. It's not written in hard language. You just have to bring your level of attention that's required because the depth of the series demand it. And the prose style actually is going to lean up just a little bit in the second half. I had to slow you down for Peril's Gates or you would have run over it. So it's probably at its thickest. The prose is the thickest in Peril's Gate if you actually analyze how it's written, for a reason, because how many levels was I bringing into play that had not been challenged at that depth yet? So I had to slow it down. Everything was done with a purpose.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier too. Yeah, it definitely felt that way, and a lot of I have a feeling there's a lot of little things in here mentioned as well that will come up later that it would seem to so easy just to gloss over. There was one section in particular where you mentioned two necromancers meeting in warded conspiracy in a shed outside of Erdane. and I'm like, I underlined it. I'm like, okay, I have not been introduced to these guys.
Oh, yes, you have.
Oh, maybe I have. But
oh, yes, you have. Remember that scene in, I guess it's Grand Conspiracy, where Seth Fear goes to reawaken all those soldiers that got put into somnolence by the trees?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And remember all the hacks that the priests of the light were bringing in to try to wake them up?
Yes. And they were having the whole mind thing.
Everybody misses the one that had the real scary stuff in her bag.
Right, that's right. So
remember the necromancer stick?
Yeah.
And Seth took it away from her and said, go back and look at that passage. It was an earthquake, and everybody steps over it, and I can't believe it. The most dangerous item in that entire sequence.
See, that's what I'm talking about right now. We miss. You had that. In
there's a mention of there's a mention in every single book all the way along, except I believe one, and that's because editorial, the editor wanted it cut out, and I acquiesced. I should have left it. It was just a one-line reference. It wasn't signally important, but I held my ground on the things that counted. And I saw that one as sort of a throwaway. It wasn't really, but anyway, so yeah, yes, you have. You just didn't look, you weren't prepared to focus on that as anything important.
Right.
So as your focus of what's important shifts, the whole book, the entire series is going to shift underneath you. It's the same beads in the kaleidoscope. You just turned it and you got another picture.
So by the time I got to Peril's Gate, I noticed that line, and I was like, okay, that I know that's going to come into play later on. But it also kind of introduced us to the fact that there's also a lot more people playing with magic than we're originally led to believe. You know, because the sorcerers are so big and
originally led to believe since when?
Wow. Then we might have thought
she learned from an older witch. She learned how to do. You got all of your dark side
right
ladies of the night who get basically contain their pregnancy by somebody's doing that work. You saw an herb witch that Dakar went and visited to try to get. So, you know, where do you get this? Oh, well, I didn't notice, but it's been in your face all along. What about the one that tried to poison Jarrett? When he crossed the continent back in, what was it? Ships of Marior?
Ships, yeah.
Yep. And he gets bitten by a dog and it goes bad, and he stops at an herb witch to get a remedy so that he doesn't get a fever from it, and she poisons the wound. So yeah, they've been there all along. There have been little things in the crannies all along.
Yeah, and that's part of what the point here is, that the magic is so infused into the society, and it's just so ironic that that Lysayer and friends have this idea they want to stamp it out, and that it just can't be stamped out. It's part of the whole society. It's part of everything, and but it's just fascinating that all these things that get thrown in there with these little hints.
That's the thing, is it's
like,
okay because you're supposed to do that. You don't take in everything. You don't take everything in the real world. You filter out what isn't important to you, and what you were focused on in the story was something else that at that time was more important. So it went past. When you change your perspective, suddenly other things come into focus that were important that you didn't notice it the first time. So it will read like a whole other book. Absolutely it will. But when you say, oh, well, this wasn't here. Yeah, it was. It was all the way back to page 1. Everything was there. You were just focused on something different.
And that ties into the multi-layer aspect of the stories. Like you can do that. You can focus on one area, read the whole story, have a good time doing it, and then go back and go, oh, wait a minute, I missed a whole bunch of other story that I can focus on again, and still have a good time reading it. And it's that that's what's good about the story itself. Is that multi-layered, that you can enjoy it no matter, and get out of it something each time.
I hope I'm alive to see the readers squeeze all the juice out of what's in there. I really do, because it was such a challenge. It's so much fun putting it in there. It'll be a glorious day when all that little stuff pops out and people find it.
But I also think it's a series that kind of does change the way you approach each book. So as each book goes through, like I think back to the maze itself. Like if that was to be just not literary, but visual, you'd be worried about threat on Arathon. But from reading this book, once it got to the discussion about the origins of the magic, especially through the clans, etc., as a reader that's now 6 books in, you're like, right, I'm really sitting up at this point, because this is the part that is juicier or more meaningful, I think, for the whole series. If you know what I mean, that's the bit that we've been waiting on in terms of like detail about origins and stuff. Because obviously we just came into the world with Arathon and Lysair at the time, and don't know as much. So I feel like a lot of the sequences and things that go through encourage you to delve in a bit the way we're talking, which is kind of like against the way that I read other books, if that makes sense. If you know what I mean, where you're just looking for the events that happen, or you're worried about the character in peril just in isolation by themselves. You're kind of starting to look for all of the little lines, a bit like Jared said about that one line, not being able to make sense of it, but underlining it anyway, because he's like, this is just a line, but it has characters in it, and every character has a name. There's no accidents here. There's not two people just walking in the road that are mentioned and not brought forward. So it does encourage you to really start to pay attention to things.
Everything is connected, but most people don't take the time to see that.
And I love how the readers miss stuff, but also the characters miss stuff. Poor Davin came out at the end of when Arathon came out of the maze and went, there were 3 people there? What do you mean there were 3 people? I only thought there were 2, or two not people, but minds there, if you know what I mean. So even he doesn't have all of the pieces together. Yeah, he doesn't have it all worked out for himself, but the reader does in that case. It's kind of a nice role reversal. I like how that played.
Yeah.
And what was it like to introduce sort of Davian as characters to be built up and teased over so many books, and finally you get to sort of unleash him? What was that like for you while you're writing it?
Well, that's part of the fun of it, because one of the things I love to do when I write is take a character and have all of the people around them think one thing, and then gradually piece together who that person is, what their past is, where they came from, what they believe. And you haven't seen the half of it with Davian. You're just barely starting to scratch the surface with that character.
Yeah.
So it will be fun. And it's, duct tape over the mouth. I needed rolls of it sitting on the desk because in particular, the original buying editor told me I don't want to know what happens in this series, and that was good and bad. It was bad because when it came to figuring out what should stay on the page, there was a lack of comprehension as to what that entire arc, what I was doing. There was a conflation of this is just an extension of another book like the Empire series, and I couldn't break them out of that rut. And when you're told by the managing editor, I don't want to know what happens, well, it's hard to explain why this book should have been handled and marketed completely differently to a different demographic almost. I'm not saying there's no crossover, there is, but a lot of people who read Empire and dismissed Light and Shadows when they were in their teens or 20s are coming back to it in their 40s and going, oh my God, how did I miss this? If they still had a copy, if they didn't go with that knee-jerk response when they were too young for it. So it was good in that nobody messed with it. Nobody tried to steer it. Nobody told me to tip my hand sooner than I wanted to. So I was completely left alone to make all the decisions, which was good and bad because certainly I would have appreciated some help. A good editor can make a huge difference, but that's all right. I got there, and I'm really proud of what the series finale looks like. So I don't think if I put any feet wrong, it was in very small increments here or there, but nothing major. Everything's in place. So the good and the bad, you take what's handed to you and you run with it.
Yeah.
And would it have made a difference? I mean, would it have made a difference if I'd had an editor that was down my neck insisting that this should be handled this way or that way? Would it have made a difference if I'd had a massive fan following screaming and yelling, hurry the books up? Or we don't like what's going on, or what's with this recap, or what's with this, because it wasn't a recap. So in a way, it's good that I got to make all the decisions because now you're getting the story that I intended to write. And if people fall off of it, it's because they're looking for something else so adamantly they don't see what's actually there.
I don't see how anyone could drop off when you have the introduction of such a fascinating character in Davian. That's just, he's a great character. And I like, and it says, there was one line here where it said he broke the monarchies. I forget who said it, but when that was said, it's just like, okay, there's a lot there. What does that mean? He broke the monarchies. How did that happen? Is that true? Or is that just somebody's perception of what he did? And I have so many questions about him going forward, and I know, like Chibipo and Matt are probably like, yeah, just wait. But
oh, Matt doesn't have a clue.
Matt
No,
not
yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Really.
Chibipo's silence for a reason, but
Yeah.
yeah, but that is so enticing. Just the introduction of that character and those little things said about him, and just a little role he had. I mean, he had a big role with Arathon at the end there, but overall in the whole book, his role was small, but it was so enticing, and I can't. He's a fascinating character. I can't wait to read more about him.
Was his role small?
He's in quite a lot of it, to be fair.
Yeah,
with Elira as well.
Yeah,
You'll see.
Yep.
You'll see. Yeah. You'll see. It'll be excruciating for me to wait to watch.
What are we all thinking at this stage? Do we think, are we sort of Team Davian, or are we sort of siding with the rest of the Fellowship? He's the betrayer.
You'll come back to that final scene in Peril's Gate quite a few times.
Ooh.
There's a lot packed into those last 6 pages.
The new boy brand of Arathon and Davian. Yeah, that's he's went from the Dakar Arathon step-to son relationship to now the new hip boy band of Davian and Arathon. Yeah. I can't wait to see what they do.
And it gave Arathon access to his library now, so I'm like, oh, what's that? Okay. this stuff.
Changing gears a little bit, well, maybe by a lot. The scene where Jarrett, uh, I need to remember to use the right vocabulary, I guess, but when he gains mate sight, when he's sleeping, and we are told that there is a third presence that Arathon detects. Does that have we seen that play out yet, or is that read and find out that there's something that will influence events in the future or something to that effect?
I'm trying to take about. Can you pull up the passage exactly? There was quite a few things going on
Okay.
in parallel with that scene. And one of them was there were protective circles that Arathon drew, and some of them got broken.
Yeah.
And the third presence, what happens after that? What happens to the clairvoyant priest?
Oh, was that
something? Yeah, something crossed into that. So there was an explosive ramification of that, and it plays out on the page, but it's subtle.
Okay.
Jerry Irish, what happened after to Jerry Irish, because he was touching on what was going on. And what happened to him?
Oh yeah, he became. Wait, I thought that was a consequence of Arathon listening to Arathon sing, but maybe
yes,
yeah.
He and it blew his mind. He went mad.
Mm-hmm. And was Arathon singing during the scene where Jared had mate sight? I'm trying to remember.
You'd have to go back and parse it paragraph by paragraph, but that's probably the third presence that you're referring to.
Okay, that makes sense. I had a
nothing ever is put in these books without purpose. So when you see something small like that, it may come around again. In other words, when you say, oh, there wasn't any herb witches, well, yes, there were. You just were focused on something else. So yeah, he went mad because he was exposed to frequencies that shattered whatever was holding his perspective in place, and it blew his brain, basically short-circuited him right out of the picture.
Yep, broke his brain.
Yeah.
So even the higher octaves that are so-called benign and beautiful, they can still be dangerous.
Interesting. We got two pieces of information. I didn't know higher octaves were supposed to be safe.
Well, remember when I said Arathon used the maze and rebuilt the frequency of matter with his mind. So yeah, the electromagnetic spectrum is unlimited. You can only parse it with numbers. And you take something like the imaginary number of pi that includes every single number ever in existence, all of them, unending, infinite numbers, all of them, without end. So that's what we're talking about here, and that's where the envelope is going to stretch really hard, is because, we think we know everything, but our instruments can only measure so much. It's a great deal more that we can't see.
And were you nervous writing about when like Girette passes over the veil and kind of the plaster's really kind of torn off, or the bandage taken from her eyes? We really start to get a little peek into what's really going on in terms of the frequencies and things. When you were writing that, were you a little bit nervous how people would perceive that, considering like this is the moment that you kind of really rip the plaster
No,
off?
because if they can't see it, they're not going to see it, they're not ready to see it, they won't see it.
Yeah.
It's like handing somebody and saying you're tone deaf, so sing an opera. If they don't have the ability to perceive what is perfect pitch, they'll miss it. It won't resonate. It won't register. And which is the other reason why some people possibly fall off of these books, is because their focus is different. Their focus is not oriented wide enough to see what's really being told here. Did it make me nervous? Well, I set out to do this. That made me nervous. That made me nervous at 18 years old when I said, I'm going to write this book and this is where it's going to go. And I do not have the learning to do it. And I'm going to have to pick it up as I go. That was terrifying. But actually writing it, when it came time to write it, that wasn't terrifying. Maybe it should have been.
If you terrify me now. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the Aths adepts and the formation of that part of the world? I think I really enjoyed reading about Aths adept. I'm pretty sure it was in this book. I was talking at some point in our discussions about how the calming presence that they sort of almost calmed me down when I was reading it. Like, so can you tell us about, yeah, just I guess anything that's not in the books already, or tell us more about the formation of the world in the Aths adept space?
They inhabit or are aware of and live through frequencies that are not physical. And the boundaries of their hostels that are heavily warded so that the interaction is contained. What's inside those hostels is not physical. It reacts to thought. You essentially have a reality that is built entirely by thought. So your mental activity is going to become very, very real. And to say that that's happening anyway, but you're not aware of it. But we live at a slower frequency, so it impacts more slowly, but that reality is there. We can measure the frequencies of thought. Doesn't mean that that goes nowhere. So Aths adepts live and are aware of and can navigate that frequency. And what are they doing? They're bringing down the whole carrier wave and containing it as a reservoir in their sanctuaries for the purpose of, if people want to be enlightened or receive initiate knowledge, they can cross that barrier and face to face. They've crossed that interface. So I won't say any more than that, because you will see more of this as things go forward. And if you go back and you look at what happens in Ships of Marior or Warhouse when Lysa steps into that sanctuary, totally unaware of what he was crossing, what boundary he was crossing, and what he was going to confront. So you will notice that nobody goes in there unguided, because it's incredibly powerful, unlimitedly beautiful, but also danger with no limit either, because the wrong thought can explode in the wrong direction. And look what happened to Varian, if you read The Gallant. Yeah. So does that explain your question a little bit in a little bit more fullness? The books will continue to unravel that thread. So Kevor's interaction was not in his burned body. It was all in his mind. That was his mental frequency interacting with that sanctuary. So at that frequency where the body doesn't exist, he was whole. He was complete. There was nothing wrong. But he had decisions to make as to where he went from there.
How many of those sanctuaries are there?
There's a whole history of Aths adepts, when they developed, where they are, what sanctuaries still exist, which ones are defunct, which ones are played out. So how many are there active right now? Spire, definitely the one at Marior. I'm trying to think. I don't want to slip here because there's so much back history involved.
Yeah, right. Which one is the one Kevor's at? Where's that one?
Kevor's, well, he went into the one at Northerly, way up on the northern peninsula.
Okay, all right.
So that one is active. So that's where he recovered.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not going to say anymore because the books are going to unwind it very smoothly. You will understand a lot more about what happens at that frequency. And it will come to play. Like I said, Peril's Gate is the fulcrum. You are now going to step off.
And do
Very
they have a
nice.
way to like transport quickly between the hostels? Like,
Keep reading.
yeah.
What's a lucid dream like? Have you ever had a lucid dream?
No, I've not. I've not had one.
People who have, when you wake up in your dream, you realize you can manipulate everything and you can change anything in that dream with the speed of thought. And that's what's so slippery is it happens too fast. We're used to living at a slower frequency. So talk to someone who's had a lucid dream.
Oh, okay.
You wake up in a nightmare and things are very unpleasant. You can change the entire thing. You can make decisions, but it's like skidding on BBs because you run out of your imagination that is trained to live in this physical body can't keep up. Your mental process is too slow for the speed of event in a lucid dream.
Interesting. Wow.
New question, unless someone else wants to go. But yeah, the training that Dakar has been receiving from Asandir, is that the same as the training that Arathon got from his grandfather and peers, or is that different? Are they just undergoing different trainings and will become different things?
What did Davien have to say about Dakar in that final 6 pages?
Oh yeah, he said that's right. What did he have? I got that somewhere.
Let me see
You
if I
got it. You got it tagged. Yeah, it's all in the book. The answer for that one is all in the book. And Dakar's training could have been similar to Arathon's, but we're dealing with master to student. Dakar is not the same kind of student.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
It could be, yeah.
Davien says it outright. He puts it in a nutshell in that 6 pages. It's right there.
interesting. What keyword do I search for?
I've got it right here.
Yes, please.
To the fellowship, endowed as you are, they would never dare to approach you. Dakar is no liability. Despite his excesses, his idiot vices, and his ungovernable passions, he will achieve the stability of Diamond, though 1,000 years may be needful to mold him.
Right.
And then he goes on and he starts, picking at Aerithon.
If you pick apart the text very carefully, you will notice that Varian is called a master spellbinder. Dakar doesn't have that title yet.
He's just a spellbinder.
Yeah. And that guy mentioned that himself earlier too.
It's all in the book. So there, your question is pretty well answered by the story itself.
And is Arathon initiate to spellbinder or spellbinder to?
He's an initiate master spellbinder. You see the echo in the language.
So they're two parallel titles.
Similar, yeah.
Okay.
Initiate mastery is probably it would be a very clear threshold to another master who could see it all, to Davien who could see it all. So watch for that. There's no accident of language in here. Now, Arathon was a prodigy and he went through a very compact measure of training, and he did not have some of the things that Dakar had going in. Dakar came in as damaged goods. He started foreseeing the future at 4 years old. And he saw some pretty unpleasant things, including the death of his own mother, and his family turned on him. If you look at his back history, I believe some of that has been mentioned.
Yes, it does.
So the fellowship basically took him in at age 10. But he was damaged goods. And there's more going on. You'll have to just read the books to unwind. All the characters' histories are buried in the text, and you'll have to discover that as you move forward.
Dakar's my favorite character, I think, and I just love his journey throughout the whole thing, and I just cannot understand why people go, "Oh, he's a stupid buffoon. I hate him." I get he's annoying and cursed, but like I just found him hilarious. And then he goes on this journey through the whole series, and it's just such a wide ranging of emotions and depth. Oh, I just love it, and especially
there's
here.
many paths, right? And all of them are valid. So just because Darkar doesn't take the Prodigy's route, so what? So what? Individuality is for a reason. But yeah, you'll have fun all the way through to the end of Song of the Mysteries.
Everybody's a role to play.
Yeah, and we get a little bit more insight into some of the other sorcerers past, and a little bit of their histories during Peril's Gate. Here and there's some stuff sprayed in. There's hints of other civilizations that I think it was mentioned in here. Cities like with steel and stuff like that were mentioned from a long ago past, and those once again it's played up that the sorcerers are not have been around a long time and they're not from here, and they have this past where they may have been responsible for the destruction of other places, or at least involved. And I'm just I'm wondering how much of that's, I shouldn't even ask how much is going to come up of that, but but as far as characters' past histories, I am looking forward to finding out more about their.
Read the short stories.
Yeah.
No, don't read Black Bargain.
But not Black Bargain
until
right.
after Arc 3. Read Black Bargain after Storm Fortress.
That's Sundering Star, though. I can recommend that one.
Yeah, Sundering Star is next on my list to read. Yeah,
that one's going to blow a few bottoms out of your.
Very
yep.
I read Child of Prophecy, and so that was very good. But yeah, I was going to read Sundering Star next. Yep.
But if you look at Peril's Gate, you see 4 characters, and their paths to a form of enlightened mastery, and they're each quite different. You see Darkar struggling. You see Jarrett and what he goes through. You see Kevor. And you see what the final step that Arathon takes. And it's a big contrast.
Yeah. It's quite different in each case, yeah.
But that book centered those 4 journeys. So it isn't just about what happens in the Wars of Light and Shadow. It's also down to a microcosm of the individuals and what their journey is and what they go through and what they put themselves through. And at what point do they step across that line, which is all voluntary?
Yeah. Kevor's journey is interesting because it's so quick, and nobody really knows. Like, people think he's dead, right? So, and no one knows his fate, and his journey is so quick. I kind of wonder about that. Is there going to be ramifications for that, to having such a a quick journey into such a state that he's in right now?
Keep reading.
Yeah, I was gonna say RFO. That's all.
That's the answer. Keep reading.
Stan book brings up too many questions.
Yeah, that's the problem with the latter half of the series. Very hard to talk about because the answer to almost everything is just keep reading.
Just keep going.
The problem I have is that I go, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Now that we know this makes so much sense. But then 5 pages later there'll be something new, and I've completely forgotten about the last revelation, and it'll come up like 3 books later, and I'll be like, huh, did they talk about this? Like, did this come out of nowhere? Because there's just so many revelations jammed in. You gotta concentrate, which I love that you got to focus on these books. You get so much out of it. These aren't books that you can skim. These are books you've got to be invested in,
Yeah.
and I love that the books enable us to become so invested in these characters and their journeys.
How did you react to the comment people make in Curse of the Mistwraith about the entrance to Rockfell Peak in Curse of the Mistwraith, where he goes, "Oh yeah, I hate the magic in these books. It's just all hand wavy." Now you're Peril's Gate. You come back to the entrance to Rockfell Peak. Whoa!
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, did your perspective change? If you miss it the first time, you won't miss it the second, and you absolutely won't miss it when it comes around the third time. So yeah, did you notice how the perspective in that one simple thing changed from if you go back to the Dakar's observing from the outside, Dakar observing from the inside?
Yeah, and the role reversal with Theon as well was really interesting with Dakar and Theon there. I love that.
Yeah. With Fionn being the brat this time.
I just want to ring him. That doesn't stop, by the way. I just
Who here is a parent? Do you have a teenager? You know exactly what you're seeing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But the teenage reader might not like it much when they see that mirror.
Yeah.
They don't like that reflection, no.
I'm curious about the hand wavy magic comment with regards to Rockfell, because at least in the part where they put in the Mistwraith and like put the wards on it, I thought that had a lot of detail and detail that was built on in later books. I think, for instance, with the scenes where Sethweir and Asandir do the star wards for the Mistwraith and so on.
But you're not told what the mechanics of it are. Like some other writers that go out and they give you the system right from the start and they explain everything and all the mechanics right from the start. No, you see it from the character's perspective, and you're not seeing it from any of the characters' inside perspective, is to see what those sorcerers are really doing.
Yeah. And I guess Dakar falls asleep for some of it, right?
He passes out. So you still haven't seen it all.
Right. Yeah.
He passes out, or it passed beyond a frequency at which he could perceive. Why do people fall asleep when they try to meditate? Boom.
I've not done that at all. Not at all fallen asleep during Shavasana in yoga class. Nope. That wasn't me. But that reminded me, we have to talk about the scene where Arathon helps during the, was it solstice or equinox? The second, it was the solstices that we were reading about in this book, right? The second and third waves that he helps out Luhain and Dakar with. Those scenes were fantastic. Can you tell us more about the writing of them?
Well, first of all, it's not easy because you're writing about things that are so far outside the envelope, they don't cross with most people's day-to-day experience. And that's probably been, why did it take so long to write some of these books? Because so much of it at this stage forward, from Peril's Gate onward, takes place outside of our day-to-day physical experience. So how do you describe something that certainly exists in physics, certainly exists in mathematics, certainly is provable in the quantum, but how do you describe that in terms of a human experience? So here we have a character going into the planetary mechanics, the frequency, the resonant frequency of the planet, and how that operates, and the electromagnetics and how they interact. How do you describe that? So those scenes were tremendously challenging to write, and where it's very easy to, part of the reason this new standalone novel is ripping off so fast is it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of characters with backgrounds, and there's banter, and there's humor, and there's abrasive conflict between them. How do you write a solo scene where there's abrasive conflict with the universe and the universal frequencies or the planetary frequencies? And here we have a character that's immersed in them, out of body, being asked to create a remedy for an imbalance. And it all works on harmonics. So as a bard, he can access that. How do you describe it? So the number of times I had to refine those scenes and describe them and push language and stretch language to do things language was not designed to do. It's a concept I could grasp mentally in an instant, but trying to put it on the page, very, very tough. And at this point, the series has kind of groomed the reader into being able to absorb that level of detail. If I'd put that scene in Curse of the Mistwraith, forget it. Off the deep end without a paddle. But bit by bit, we've built the comprehension to be able to handle that scene. So does that answer your question? No, it wasn't easy at all. It's where imagination and symbolism, language has to intersect. And then try to create a pathway that you can get another reader that has not had a similar experience to get them to follow it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Of using language that hasn't been used that way before. That's very.
It has to be done with metaphor. So why did I cram the whole damn first half of the books, front loading it with lots of metaphor? Because you were going to need it. It was a tool you had to develop in order to comprehend what's going to come in the second half of the series, in particular in Arc 4 and 5. So it was building the muscle to be able to heft that weight and that depth. So, you know, people can say what they want, purple prose and all that, but every single piece of this was done for a purpose, because you would not have been able to comprehend what was happening on the page there without metaphor. So metaphor is the only way to do it.
It's not purple prose, it's purpose prose. Sorry.
So yeah, people who don't like metaphor, you're gone. First book, bye.
And I like there, Janny, how you picked up on talking about like the human experience and linking that with the really crazy kind of out there stuff that's going on with the harmonics and frequencies, because that stuff's really cool and exciting, but I don't think any of that would matter if we didn't care about the human experience these characters go through. And I think this book, more than any other, all the stuff we go through with Jira and Dakar, and obviously especially Arathon, this really kind of elevates the human experience that's within these pages.
That's the purpose of it, though. It's to bring those experience into the range of our human experience, because how much do we react to stuff? You walk into a room and you say, this room has bad vibes. On some frequency, you're aware of stuff going on and you can't put your finger on what it is. We have more ability to sense our surroundings. If you look at, I've seen videos where a guy was standing next to a racetrack and a car went off the track. And he literally leaped out of the way. And if you see this race car coming at him at 100 and something miles an hour, and the contortions his body takes to get around that race car and not be touched, the connection that the human body has to its surroundings is far more profound than we're aware of, or we give credit for, or our science gives credit for, because our science can't quite parse the frequencies at which that happens. We're far more aware of our immediate environment than we admit. We're far more connected to everything, the weather, all of the input, all of the thoughts, all of the feelings. It's like a cross chop, and we're swimming through it all the time. And we say the vibe here is this or that. So how do I write a series in which I'm going to integrate all of that into the human experience through the characters at their varying levels of awareness? It's a tremendously ambitious thing to try to do. And it's so much fun to see you getting it and enjoying the story at the same time.
And I'm curious as well, is there anything that you've put in these books that you've noticed that over the years that science has sort of caught up on or is catching up on that you'd kind of written about before?
I don't know. I suppose it depends what path evolution takes. How do we choose to evolve and move ourselves forward? Right now, we're neck deep in physical connection through social media and physical connection through devices, but other cultures connected differently. They were just as aware of what their ancestors were doing. They were totally aware that if you look at the math, time is simultaneous. There is no such thing as past and future. Past is a memory. That's a thought. Future is a projection. That's a thought. Where we are right now is where it's at. So the past is a myth. The future is a projection. There were cultures that understood this very, very clearly through different means than we have now. So how does a culture choose to evolve? Watch for that. And what would happen if the culture chose to go a different route to make connections than through electronic devices? So we can hear thoughts from people on the far side of the world, filtered through what they decide to show us. But there are other means to do that, and other cultures tap that quite regularly. If you ever looked at some of the Aboriginal art from Australia, and you fly in a plane over Central Australia and you look down, you go, these guys were doing their paintings out of body, and they were looking down on the springs, and the people are a big sea, the arms. So, you look and you go, these people had a perspective of what was happening far different than our perspective with our physical eyes. So in a way, you got to look sideways to how other people evolved, or what they focused on, or what was important to them. Because we're just a one-note wonder. We're seeing through one perspective in Western civilization. There are many perspectives available to human beings, and have been all through history.
And
it's
really
understanding what you're seeing, right?
Yeah. And I got to experience some of that in person. I've shown Janny this. I'm going to put out a video from when I was in Chichen Itza. I took my copy of Trader's Knot. I thought it'd be cool to take a picture. But what was really cool was I was standing in this place where you have a temple one side of you, massive, it's the big famous one from Chichen Itza. Then you have about 2 or 3 other temples around the grounds there. And basically you can like clap your hands and you can hear the vibrations. And what they'd do is they'd have all the people standing in this sort of arena where the temple's surrounding them, and they'd have the priest up at the top of the big temple, and he could speak from there, and no matter where you were or what direction you're facing, you could hear the priest clear as day. And the fact that they had an understanding of harmonics and resonances that allowed that was really cool. And I got a video of it with me there with Trader's Knot and showing that. And it's really cool to see how these cultures understood that and did things that we'd struggle with today, to be perfectly honest. And they were doing this thousands
we
years
dismiss
ago.
it. We dismiss it. I had an interesting moment where I looked at a book which was talking about mythic cosmology from the Welsh perspective, and they had diagrams. And here were the astronomers, or the people from Western PhDs writing about this thing. They had no clue. We have all these planets, and they circle the sun, and these guys had no clue how the planets worked, because they arranged them on the cross of the circle, and the planets don't do that. And they're banging on about how the ancient Welsh didn't understand cosmology. Well, you look at the map and you throw another template from another culture over that, and you go, well, they weren't drawing the paths of the planets around the sun, idiots. They understood that by some of their stone markers and things that they built into the earth. They perfectly well understood the mathematics and the mechanics of the celestial universe. What they were doing was drawing an energetic map. And if you look at astrology or the tarot, you will see earth, air, fire, water, and each of those elements is assigned to a planet. Surprise, earth, air, fire, water. They were building a medicine wheel, an energetic medicine wheel of the cosmos based on something else, not the concentric pattern of planets going around the sun. So how much knowledge do we toss right out the window as not being relevant because our perspective never stepped outside of our little hut of what we learned when we grew up and what we were told by our school, our religion, and our parents? And some people, when you try to step outside of that, they get angry. Surprise, the world isn't simple. So I'm looking at how much knowledge have we also tossed. And I think you hit it. You're standing in these thousands of years old ruins. How did they know how to position that stuff to make that happen? They were probably following a different line of knowledge than what we would have, which is so physically oriented. How did they line up all of those temple sites in all of those lines, straight lines, those energetic lines in certain countries? You can draw lines through, look at the St. Michael's temples globally, and it's a straight arc. They all line up. How'd they do this? They were doing it differently. Yeah, their unit of measure was not the same thing that we understand now.
I just couldn't comprehend it because they had this long field, right, where they played a sport game, and they'd have the royal family on either side split, and you could, if you were on that perfect line in the middle, the royal family could talk from one end of the football pitch to the other, and nobody else around them could hear them. So they could talk literally from one end of the pitch to the other without anybody else around hearing them, as long as they weren't like in the middle of that straight line, which is just crazy. And me and my friend were doing this, trying this out, and you could be 100, 200 meters from me and still hear me perfectly fine without me raising my voice, talking at the same level I am now, as long as you're dead straight ahead of me. It's just crazy.
Not crazy. Really they were using a different science, but it's not based on the science that we know. And I find all of that fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. That we have knowledge, but we dismiss it. And it's almost a shame because people just don't want to look further than their own nose. So these books challenge that in a big way. Look at the old Greek theaters, same thing. You can go into those outdoor Greek theaters today and sit on the top step and hear everything those actors are saying on the stage. And they still do plays in those ancient theaters.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So, Matt, did you walk through Peril's Gate? Is that what you're saying?
Almost, yeah. Damn, that would be cool. Kind of.
It would be terrifying, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was terrified reading about it, so I don't know.
Yes. Well, you really played with our emotions when at the end of that first maze, we were told that this is the first stage of what he had to do.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, what? There's more? Oh, no.
Oh. So, any other topics we should talk about before we wrap up the stream?
Surely.
Well, Janny,
surely. What?
I was going to say, so I know you've mentioned before in a few streams and things that you said, you kind of had to take time off after this book because it was so heavy writing this stuff, and you wrote Ride Hell's Chasm. But how long did it really take you to kind of get back into writing Trader's Knot after writing Peril's Gate and all this heavy stuff?
I was just emotionally ragged by the time I finished Peril's Gate because it was such a powerful, intense journey. A lot of intense events happened in that. And so much of the writing was pushed outside the envelope. So I was just word exhausted. And also that was the break point where my US contract dissolved because of that huge merger. And I didn't know it, but my agent in London had diabetes and he had a foot amputated and he forgot to submit. So whilst Hell's Chasm was making the rounds in the US trying to get a new home, and the whole rest of the series was dangling, there was no contract for it. And Britain, which had renewed consistently all the way through, suddenly was incommunicado. So I had a 2-year period where I thought that they had the book and didn't want it. And the US editors were saying, we don't even want to look at this. We looked at your bookstore numbers due to the merger and the mislaunch of Peril's Gate. So pretty much I thought my career was cooked. And I was going through menopause. And I was facing all these people saying the series is sprawled out. It's going nowhere. The author can't finish anything. It's never going to get finished. the connection isn't there. She doesn't know how to bring this to a close. Other authors were not finishing their series and dying. And so I said, I just need a breath of fresh air. I need to write a standalone book, one and done. I need to just do this and prove that I know exactly what I'm doing. And I need a book that I can send out there as a standalone and see if I can make a go of this and repick up a US publisher. So I had to wait while the rights were reverting to do that. So Hell's Chasm seemed the normal, natural thing to do. Just turn the page, do something fresh, and then come back to it. And so that's exactly what I did. Trader's Knot was easier to write because now we have the full cast of characters coming back on stage. We have the women doing really fun things. We have all the stuff that was waiting to happen, but Peril's Gate was that fulcrum. So Peril's Gate and Storm Fortress wrote very, very easily comparatively to Peril's Gate. So Hell's Chasm was done for multiple reasons and as a rest and as a piece of fun, and also to say to the readership, I'm not losing it. I know exactly what I'm doing here, so bear with me here. It was also designed a bit to bridge some of those Empire readers who couldn't handle the big series. Give them a book that they could step into my work a little bit more slowly and get something out of it quicker. In an ideal world with unlimited time and massive support from the publisher, I would have done a standalone in between every one of these volumes. It was very hard to write the whole thing end to end, but that's what is demanded by publishing. That's what's demanded by the readership now. They accuse you of not finishing if you step aside. I got a lot of excoriation for not completing the series when I did Hell's Chasm, but I still believe there was value in taking that time to do it.
Agreed. Yeah, you still managed to put out books in good time. I mean, Trader's Knot came out in 2004, I think. So that wasn't that long a wait compared to some of the waits we're used to nowadays for books.
The entire series was worked on since I was 18. I probably rewrote the opening scenes in Curse of the Mistwraith 18 times to hit on the most efficient way to launch this big mess. And it still isn't ideal because people read it and they don't see the connections yet, and they figure I'm wasting time, or they can't relate, and they're not patient. Like older readers were more patient back in the day when the internet didn't speed everything up. So in fact, I had written draft all the way through all of the scenes to the end of Peril's Gate, and a good chunk of bits of things, Trader's Knot and Storm Fortress, a lot of that was drafted. So after that point, when I started into Arc 4, at that point I had very detailed notes and I had fragments of scenes, but nothing had been drafted in complete form. So you'll notice the writing slowed down tremendously when I started Arc 4. And it slowed down for 3 reasons, actually. 3. 1, I was starting with raw draft on blank page, and I had to work out all of the decision making, a lot of which had been done before because I'd worked on it for 20 years before I completed Curse of the Mistwraith and sold it. So 30 years, actually. So I was writing on blank page. A lot of Arc 4 takes place outside the envelope. So I'm having to work with language where language just doesn't go. So I'm stepping off the real brink in Arc 4. And the last reason was aging parents' problems. My parents were getting old and they required some care, and I lost my dad. And downsizing my mom's house, 3 different times to move her into various stages of assisted living. So there was a lot of work that had to be done just physically because you reach that time of life where a lot of demands are placed upon you. And in the beginning of writing this, I was working around the clock practically. I got up in the morning, I did my horse. 5 o'clock, I might take some time off to ride, but then I came back to it and I was working till midnight, 1 in the morning. I didn't watch TV. I didn't go to movies. I didn't do anything but sit in this chair. And that changed after Peril's Gate when I realized I could burn up my whole life on this project and may never even see print. So maybe it's time to take an evening off and watch a movie. Take an evening off and spend time with my husband. Take a little bit of time and just catch my breath and not write at that frenetic pace because I burned myself out trying to meet the demands of getting one book after another in a short space of time when I was handling depth that was so much deeper than most epic fantasy at that time was doing. So I slowed my pace just a little bit, just so I wouldn't die of burnout. So if you add up all the time it took to write the final 3 volumes, actually they wrote at about the same pace the rest did. I just had less material on the ground going forward. And I was working where language just doesn't go. With all the action, with all the feet on the ground things that actually happen, keeping you engaged with the characters. So it didn't just string out over a void. So it took a lot of working out. And if you look at the way that this book is presented, except for Jarrett's forevision of seeing an event that was going to happen 8 months later, you see these events simultaneously or moving forward. There are no flashbacks. Now we follow what these characters were doing for this 4 months. No, it's all simultaneous or moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to work the Chinese number puzzles, to slot everything in, which point of, you know what's happening, but which character's point of view, which point of action, which moment do you choose to put on the page? It has to be highly efficient. And when it came to Song of the Mysteries, it had to be so efficient it was greased. I couldn't spend any time that wasn't absolutely moving things to a finish point. So making those decisions sometimes took a lot of thinking, a lot of insomnia time.
Sure.
So I don't think, when you say it took Tolkien 18 years to write Lord of the Rings, I was speedy, but was I whipping them out at the rate that some of these authors do? No, I worked at a slower pace because I had more balls in the air.
With good results.
Well, thank you. It's
good.
really, really a privilege for me to see you guys enjoying this much.
Yeah.
Because it says to me all those months of hard work and years of hard work are paying off.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and we need to get some kind of spoiler-free stream going to talk about the second half of the series so that more people know about it. So when all of us have got further in, we need to coordinate.
It's a good idea, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big secret, and it's very hard because the spoilers are so thick. But yeah, the reviews drop off, even though readers are reading them. They're reading them and they're giving them good ratings, but the amount of talk that happens in the second half of that series, I can hope that builds, because that's what we need for the audio to take off, and then it would really explode.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful to you guys for walking in the dark, because this is not the most talked about series out there. You don't get instant follows for talking about Wars of Light and Shadows. So you guys are in on the ground floor, and I appreciate that more than you know.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Wait till we have the discussion for the finale.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be so
I'm itching for the one on Traders Not. Oh, it's going to be so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's going to go like hell. The top is fully wound up. It's going to go like hell. So anybody else have anything? Any questions?
Did you have any little tidbits to share with us, or some little backstory or anything?
No, I think I'm going to keep my cards hidden until you've seen just a little bit more of things opening up, because really you've stepped into Traders Not, and that's you've only started it. You've only started what's coming. But yeah, it always takes people by surprise, because they say, "Oh, we expected the pace to let up." It doesn't.
Certainly does not.
So yeah, my roll of duct tape is here in force. So yeah, watch for it. I think Phillips and Joanna's in AP's group are getting into Peril's Gate next.
Nice.
Yeah, I was wondering when their discussion was. I thought it's been a while.
The rumor was mid-August, but give them some incentive here.
They've got fun coming.
I'll tease Joanna on a Discord channel.
So yeah, which Discord is this? Blazes?
No, hers is Fireside. That's the name of it.
Okay, I don't do Discord because they got a little too invasive, wanting to know too much personal information.
Yeah.
So I'm not. But apparently, Beard of Darkness is starting a Discord, and they're just about to begin with Curse of the Mystery. So if you want to get in on the fun of that one, yeah, get in on the Discord there. And Blaze just had a daughter born. Yeah, so somebody's going to need to keep that place hopping because he's not going to have the time and the energy that he once had to keep his Discord going. So onward. And then we have Talking Story, and that group starting in January. I guess they're going to start with the Gallant in December. So you're going to have lots of time to play the guy with the duct tape roll in the background if you want to.
So much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I never know how this series is going to hit. It's like Jimmy Nutt bounced off it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Petriclio read Curse of the Mistwraith, and I don't know when I'm getting to the next one. So, I don't know. Matt
has he read to Ride House Chasm?
Yeah, he liked it. He liked it.
Okay.
But this isn't To Ride House Chasm. I think
a
lot of people hit that point where the action slows at Westgate until the midpoint of Curse of the Mistwraith, and they're seeing things and they don't know why they're seeing it. So there is tension, there is suspense there, but they're looking for the suspense to go in a different direction. And so a lot of people bog there because they can't understand why those scenes are put there. Even my editor told me, cut the scene with Perrin in volume 1. And I can't say why yet, but that character and that situation had to be on the page at volume 1. Otherwise, tomato surprises left and right. You're going to see some in Trader's Knot, but those things had to be there on the ground floor. And where some readers will say, give Harry Dresden till the 4th volume to really kick off and get going. They won't give a big epic fantasy, especially by an author that isn't hugely popular, that many books to really see the veil come off. So I've done it as quick as I could without losing the impact, but you really have to view this series in the entirety to understand what it was that was happening in that book 1. So anyway, that you guys who have seen far enough down the line to understand that those scenes have meaning, to get those people over the hump, because I don't have the thousands of legions of Malazan readers, or I don't have the thousands of legions of Wheel of Time. Just slog through those volumes 8 and 9 or whatever they are. So it takes a certain amount of trust in the author, and when the author isn't well read enough and there aren't enough readers to help that along, it gets more challenging, because then it's the unusual reader that reads for that kind of depth and detail who's going to pick it up right away. So that's where I see really cool things are opening up in the future, and where, if you guys enjoy the series, you can get in on the ground floor to build the fire a little higher. And that would make room for so much more, because this universe is vast. Absolutely vast. And I've got short fiction sort of sitting here waiting in the wings, but I don't know what I can do with it yet. So I'll be doing some lighter themed standalone work to get the wheels rolling, to see what cards I got to play. And probably the shorts I'll be doing on my own. We'll see. But publishers pretty much said launch is here. It's tailing off at this point. The picture they have right now is the picture they have. So it will take us to move it forward. And I know
said anything about the audio? Yeah, or
totally total silence. I should know a little bit more into the fall, because we're in the summer slows. 90% of everybody is off on holiday. I should know more in the fall, but wouldn't it be nice to give them a huge surprise in the fall? Like a massive rash of new readers starting with this new discussion, like a massive show of support for AP and Joanna that broke the waves a bit. I mean, nobody had heard of this before Blaze and AP said we're doing something.
Yeah.
Nobody had. So the quality's there. It's up to the readers, and I'll back you 100%. If you hear of somebody who wants a copy of these books, who's a reviewer, I'll move the mountain and try to get it to happen. Because what else can I do except get the books out there? So thank you for all that you're doing.
Yeah.
And oh boy, I can't wait. You're hitting convergency now, and it's just.
I want to hear your guys' theories on what's going to happen next. And after
that would be fun
with Davian.
I have no idea. I just hope we get lots of this Arathon Davian partnership. That kind of fun. We'll have some fun with that. That's sort of what I want to see. Because for me, regardless of anything else, it's the character work, and especially when you get characters that you know well enough to a certain point, you get them put with different characters, and how that creates different dynamics is always the stuff that I really look forward to. It's that kind of, you turn the page, you see, oh, this is a chapter with whoever, and you start rubbing your hands, and then you go to reading it.
You'll be very satisfied. I was in tears on the plane in some parts in a way I haven't since Warhost. Very good character work.
Nice.
Yep, there's a man wants to see his hair stand on end. I'm not going to leave any stones unturned here. You're going to have some fun coming.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, anybody else have speculation what you think is going to happen?
Oh, I wouldn't dare. I don't know.
You wouldn't. Chibi Post being very quiet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could guess it if you
I'm
tried.
gonna say something, and give something away, and I don't want to do that.
Nope, can't do that.
No.
There's some zingers coming down. There's some massive zingers coming down the pipe. Storm Fortress, there's some massive zingers coming down. You will not see them coming.
You guys are going to love it when the multiverse opens and Tom Bombadil walks in.
Oh, boy. I'm not a Bombadil fan, so... it was nice seeing the insight that Varsha had done on a bit of a journey here when she was so excited about Jared getting his mage sight, and then literally a couple days later she's like, but I don't want to read on because I can see and I'd come for that character as well. I can't do it. She went from such highs of getting her wish to then no.
Yes, I was very sad when Jared died, and I kept telling everyone not to build my hopes up that we will see him in another form. I guess I can wish for that. I don't know if that's a prediction, but I'd like to wish for it some more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any specific predictions, but I'm hoping for a lot of Davian Arathon banter. I think we got a bit of that towards the end of Peril's Gate, but more. Nice.
Don't look too smug.
Matt. and I bet Chibi-Po looks pretty smug too, though we can't see him.
Even more smug than me. He knows everything.
No, not everything.
Not
Well,
everything, but
all the way up to the end of the series, though. So, yeah.
See, a lot of the short fiction was written because readers oversimplified the history. They massively oversimplified the history, and I'm going, no. So I would often write a short story to iron that out. If you go to the FAQ section in the Paravia wiki or website or wherever Brian stuck it, how the feud between Celestit and Svalin developed is a whole longer story than just one day they decided to have a blood feud. It wasn't that simple. So a lot of times I will sit down and write stuff because people tend to say, oh, it's just, and they'll throw out a line and it's just so oversimplified that I'm going, the actual history was a lot deeper than that. I just exchanged a huge bunch of email with Brian over the history of Atara and how certain things came about and how certain factions were interacting and how that crossed through what was going on with certain crown princes and what the royal lines were doing and what else was going on in the world. And it was like very fast. Your head is spinning because you're going sideways into other regions impacting what was happening there. And so oversimplifying is the biggest mistake we make in our world today, looking at the news. The news wants to get a pundit up there and oversimplify the heck out of it and make it into a simple, dramatic sound bite. And that is not how things actually work. How does your weather forecaster come up with the storm track? Thousands of data points are going into that. And they still aren't certain where it's going to steer. So that's the way I look at the back history of this world and also the forward history of this world. I see into the future too. This is just one point, one slice taken out of the middle of it. It's an immensely complex tapestry, and I would love to be able to pursue more of it. But I'm hobbled because not enough people have read the series. And if I write up far future stories, I don't want to risk spoiling Song of the Mysteries. And there aren't enough readers from Song of the Mysteries to support the time it would take to write that story because there's not enough fan base to support it. So I'm not writing for the market and I'm not writing to pay the bills per se, but I do have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate everything you're doing. And Varsha, thanks for organizing this. Thank you all for still being here. $6 along. The fuse is lit.
Yep, lots of excitement coming up. Let's do outros. Matt, could you start us off?
You can find me over at Hobbit Hole Books on Twitter or lurk on Patreon forums and several Discords, including Blazers.
Chibi Bo?
You can find me on Twitter and lurking over on Page Chewing.
Jared, who was showing off his copy of Trader's Not.
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and you can find me on podcasts like Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts on pagechewing.com.
Chris?
Yes, my name is Chris Mullen from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel and from Page Train, and it's great to see Varsha back in form, remembering to do outros and stuff. This is just wonderful stuff. Back to being a pro.
It was just that one time, I promise. and Janny, where can people find you and your books?
My books should be readily orderable. You probably may not see them if you walk into a bookshop, but if you don't, you can howl. But the books should all be in print. They should all be readily available. Let me know if they're not, because it means some are cog is slipped. I have a website. There's a forum on that website that you can join if you want to talk to people who have read the whole series, or you have extra. There is a wiki that you can look at. I'm on Goodreads. I drop occasionally reviews there. I'm on X, Twitter, pretty regularly, following the book community and certain parts of the science community. And I've got a membership at Page Chewing, and I do pop through there and lurk and comment occasionally. And I also have an account on, where else? Blue Sky. I go in and out of Reddit, and I'm also on Blue Sky.
Cool.
So you can find me. And there is a fan page on Facebook, which I do not visit. It's run by my web guy. But if you direct an important question there, he will ping me and let me know. It would be too much for me to follow everything all the time. I just couldn't keep that all up. I couldn't deal with the navigation on Facebook. It's so wonky. I know there's discussions and things going on there, but I just can't figure out how to find anything.
Yeah.
So that account is active, but you're better off writing me an email if you really want to reach me.
Sounds good. We are going to be starting up our discussions of Trader's Knot in, I think, 2 weeks, the second week of August. So if you've been reading along with us would like to start and talk about this book with us or any of the earlier books, come check out the Patreon forum. You can also check out the Patreon forum if you want to talk about any of the later books. Just maybe Matt and Chibi will chat with you about those. And the discussions are open to anyone who's willing to join. So do consider checking out the Patreon forum in that case too, because that's where we do all the planning. Thank you so much for listening or watching the stream. We will see you in about 2 weeks with the first 3 chapters. Did we decide, or 4? I think the 165-ish page mark of Trader's Knot. Yeah, no, man, no.
You won't be able to stop.
So, we will see you then. Thank you so much. Bye.